Hello.
Hello, good sir.
What's going on?
Oh, the usual. This is, I think, the only time in the past like 3 or 4 weeks that I get on the computer is to talk to you. That's it.
Well,
Isn't that
that's kind
crazy?
of awesome. Yeah. I'm
It
glad I'm
is
keeping you in the
so,
loop.
yeah, it is so weird. I spend a lot of time, on my phone, of course, but I like rarely ever do anything on the computer right now in my efforts to rest. And
Yep.
it feels so weird.
Yeah, it's hard to be off the computer. Like it's just so natural instinct to go to it. So it's kind of amazing that you've managed to stay off it in your effort
Yeah,
to
and
rest.
the bad thing is there are things that I feel like I can only do on my computer, which is
Right.
like, process emails and respond to people. And so I'm just
Hmm.
having, just not really doing that, which is not
Right.
great. But I'm like, I'll do that when I get on my computer. And then all week I don't get on my computer.
I think it's
So if you're
understandable.
waiting on a response from me, sorry about that.
You got a lot going on.
I got a lot going on.
There was a picture on Twitter the other day of you with two babies
Oh,
crashed
man.
out. So I think you're
Totally
still
zonked.
in that zone.
Yeah, they were both crying. It was Sunday afternoon. They were both crying.
Both crying.
Jennifer was napping. The big kids were napping, and so I just I had to scoop them both up. So you pick one up, take them to the other baby's crib, and then you kind of like scoop them both up together, kind of like press them into each other and scoop them up, and then you go sit down in the chair and fell asleep. So still firmly in it for sure.
Were they still crying when you fell asleep, or you managed to get them to stop
No, I managed to get them
crying?
to stop crying. Yeah,
Okay,
the rocking and the holding
right.
managed to get them to stop crying. So, you don't want to train them to like only fall asleep when you hold them, but
Yeah,
some days it's like y'all need to nap.
I know. We went through a bunch of different phases of that. We were like on the let them cry it out with the oldest for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was the best advice we got in the end. Like by the third one, we were like, "Nah, that's stupid. Like, let's just
Yeah.
like keep this kid happy." Because I mean, it's like I don't know. I just don't know if it really works in the way of the promise of it all. Like in
Yeah.
reality, like the baby wants you because like the baby needs you, and
Yeah.
like pretending the baby doesn't need you. I don't know if that really works out so well, really. So,
So
yeah.
the best thing we ever did, and if anyone is about to have a kid, you should do this too, is a course called Taking
Mm.
Care of Babies.
Ooh.
And the woman's name is Cara, Cara. So it's Taking Care of Babies, and
Okay.
it is a lifesaver. It just teaches you
Mm.
basically like how to soothe the baby, how to help them learn how to fall back asleep on their own, like a system for when you go in, like what you should do and how long you should soothe them and that sort of thing. It's just amazing. So Taking Care of Babies, look it up. It's wonderful. And I found out somebody messaged me because I had talked about it on Twitter, and some guy messaged me and was like, "Hey, thanks for your Laracon talk. I really appreciated it. By the way, I'm a Laravel dev, and I work at a place called Taking Care of Babies, and so if you need free access," and I was like, "No, I
That's
use Taking
crazy.
Care. I already bought it. It's amazing. This is wild." So
That's
yeah,
unbelievable.
I know. I was a super small world that Laravel dev messaged me on LinkedIn about it, so I thought that was kind of cool.
Man, I love small world stuff. That's like some of my favorite, like just things in the whole world, the small world stuff. Like
Yeah.
I haven't had one of those moments in quite some time. I need a small world moment to hit me here soon.
Somebody
Yeah.
reach out to Ian with a small world
Yeah.
moment. He's in desperate need.
Just artificially run into me somewhere, like
Yeah.
fly to
Yeah.
Poughkeepsie and bump into me by accident.
Yeah,
No, don't do that.
exactly.
But I remember
So
I feel like I used
we're doing all right.
good. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
You're surviving. You got 4 kids. You know,
Four kids.
it's
So
gonna
many
be a little rough
kids.
for a
It's
little
gonna be a
while,
little
but
rough. Everyone's a little bit sick right now, myself included.
oh
So
no.
yeah. Just keeps the hits just keep coming, man.
Oh man.
All
Well,
right, so I got a fun one at the
yeah.
top before we
Okay.
get into real topics.
Okay, good. Let's do it.
So I was thinking, um, we always start the show with like, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going?" There's a
Yeah.
greeting. There's a greeting that I don't use as much anymore, but I used to use
Mm.
it all the time,
Okay.
And half the time it would like really confuse people, and half the time it was totally fine. And the greeting is, "What's the good word?" You
Okay.
ever use this? Have you ever used this as a
No.
greeting? No.
No.
That's it. That's the whole greeting.
I think
Somebody
that's
walks in.
something upbringing thing there or something like.
Somebody walks in and you say, "What's the good word?" And some people treat it as like, what's going on, or like how's it
Yeah.
going. I did have some friends that would just look at me and say, "I don't know how to respond to that."
So I think in New York, I have used and I've definitely heard like, "What's the word?"
What's the word? Okay, that's
What's
the
the
same.
word?
That's
I
the
don't know.
same.
The good adds like a whole different connotation to me.
No,
Like,
no, no.
but yeah,
That's totally the same
all right,
thing.
okay. Then
So
I've
what's the
heard that.
word, and how do you
What's the
respond
word?
when somebody said what's the word? How do you respond?
I mean, I think it's a similar because it's just like it's like I treat it like what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, what's the word on the street? Like that's how it would really be.
Okay,
Like,
I
what's
like
the word
that.
on the
Yeah,
street? What are you hearing out there? What's going on in the streets? But now people don't go in the streets. But in the 70s, like you went in the streets.
yeah.
So it's like a very 70s phrase to me of like,
That's
what's
cool.
the
I
word out
like
there
it.
on the
It's got a
streets?
cool
Yeah.
vibe.
It does have a good vibe. I
The
like that
other
vibe.
one, and this I learned from my grandpa. He would always, when we would go over there, he would always say, "What do you say, little A?" Because I was the youngest, and my name's Aaron. He would always say, "What do you say, little A?" And I never what do you say? I don't know. My response was always, "I say it, Grandpa," and that was it. What do you say, little A? I say it, Grandpa. And so that's often a greeting I will use as well. Somebody will walk in, I'll say, "Hey, what do you say?" And they're like, what do you
I
mean?
like
What
what do
do
you
I
say.
say?
I like
What
what
do
do
you
you
say
say.
is
That's
cool.
good.
That's a great
Yeah.
one.
I think that there's a line in Heat. I don't know if you ever watched the movie Heat.
Yeah, one time.
Heat. Yeah, you got to watch it like at least another
Great
100
movie.
times. Great movie. One of my favorites, top 5. But there is a line where Al Pacino's like, I think he says he's like, "What do you say? What do you say?" or something like that at one point. So yeah, I'm down with what do you say. I am also down with the whole idea of like when I'm a grandpa, just saying crazy shit to little kids and
totally.
grandbabies, like because what do you have to say to them anyway? Like I can't relate to you, so I'm just gonna say weird shit to you. Like now I understand why they should have weird shit to us because it's like
Yes.
I can barely relate to my own kids. Like the next generation out, we have no idea
Not a
what's going
chance.
on.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just like, I'm just gonna say crazy shit and give them $5 and like do
Exactly.
weird
Yes.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Say, what do you say, little A? Like, yeah. It's endearing. I still remember it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of stuff you remember.
There's a
Stuck in
show that we used to watch a lot called The Prophet, and it was with Marcus Lemonis, and it was like a
there. Oh,
business show. And
yeah.
one time he walked into a business and he said, "What's the good word?" And I freaked
Oh
out.
man.
I freaked out. I paused it. I rewound it. I recorded it on Snapchat and sent it to all my
wow.
friends. I was like, "Look, this is normal. People say this."
Wow.
I know.
Is he
Isn't
from
that
the
crazy?
same area as you? Maybe he's from Texas. Are you from? Are you actually from Texas?
I am from Texas. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think he is. I think he's. I think he's
picked
from
it up somewhere.
Yeah, the Northeast. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, "That's the first person I've actually. There's proof. What's the good
Yeah.
word? Is real.
Not just your own made up weird things.
No, not just my own made up stuff." So there you go. There's my random top of the show.
I like it. I think it's like one of those didn't we just take like one of those tests recently where it was like I think it was you and me doing this. Maybe it was another person, but where it's like, you like bring a bunch of questions and like they figure out where you're from based on your answers to like, do you know this
sound like you're slang and stuff. Yeah.
Stuff like that. They gotta add what's the good word in there. So I would like to see a map.
Yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know how to triangulate it. I don't know anyone
I
else.
don't think you can do it on a personal level. You're gonna have. We need the experts on this one. But
yeah,
maybe
no, that was not me. Sounds fun though. Sounds like a blast. Wish I could have been there.
Yeah, I should dig it up. I think it was like some New York Times quiz thing or something. It was one of those sites that was like, you can answer 20 questions, and
those always go around at Thanksgiving when they're like, "What do you call the stuff inside the turkey?" And it's like stuffing, cornbread, dressing.
Right, yeah,
like
exactly.
Stuff like
it was those things.
Yeah.
All right, we got a little feedback.
Oh, right.
Thomas Weber sent us an email. Loves the podcast. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas.
But yeah, 2 questions. So what kind of methodology and tools do you use in your respective work for software development? So how do you plan which features or aspects the team works on? Sprints and cycles, and like Trello, Basecamp or similar. So I don't know. What do you have like your go-to tools when you're building something?
Yeah, so I'm not in that kind of position at Planet Scale anymore. But I was, for many, many years at the
Yeah.
property tax company, and we relied heavily on Basecamp.
Mm,
And I mean that's basically it. We were all in Slack. There were maybe only, including me, 4 or 5 developers, so it wasn't a very big team. And I was the one that like took all of the requirements from the business and like
mm,
translated them into actual, solutions that we would build. Because the CEO would love to come to me with solutions, and I'm like, what is the problem you're trying to solve here? And I'm like, oh,
right.
there's a 10 times easier way to do that.
Right.
So we used Basecamp and found it extremely easy to use and helpful.
Mm,
Personally, I don't really keep track of that stuff. I don't have any really big ongoing projects right now,
mm,
where I need active development. But I have used Trello in the past, but we use Trello for this podcast and it's perfect for that. And then my other tools are just PHP Storm, Herd, all the standard right down the middle Laravel stuff. I'm not a big like, I think we've talked about this before. I'm not a big like, customize my setup, dot files,
right.
NeoVim. I'm pretty vanilla. I'm pretty like right down the middle, just kind of get stuff done. So
Yeah.
you've got a big team. What's your setup?
I mean, I don't actually have a big team, but I have a team. But yeah. So I mean, we've done all different things. I don't even have a structure I like right now, to be honest with you. Like we've done Trello, which was fine, but something that's always off to me about Trello. Like for what we use it for, it's great. There's like 2 columns, and I can
Mm-hmm.
deal with it, and it's fine. But when you get into like there's a bunch of columns and storing lots of stuff, and it's, I don't know. Like Dave, the producer of this podcast, he loves the Trello, but for me, I find it. I want to like it more than I actually like it.
Mm-hmm.
But and then right now I'm in Linear, but I'm not
Oh
even really
yeah.
using it. Like I've logged some stuff in Linear for the kind of big next gen HelpSpot stuff. It's more a place I dump some ideas because like maybe I want to use this, but then I don't think I want to use it. So there's just ideas in
Linear's
there.
cool.
It is cool. I don't know. Then they had that database issue recently, and they didn't have backups. And I'm like, how do you not have backups of this big tool? So that was weird.
Yeah.
Um, so and then like what the core thing right now, I use just GitHub issues, like
Yeah.
write it up in GitHub issues, and then like you can close it out from there and all that stuff. But I don't know. I'm also in terms of the big project I'm actually on right now. I'm still kind of in the I don't like. I'm a like we have the 2 types of writers, right? You have the outliner and the
Mm-hmm.
gardener or whatever. I'm the
Hmm.
gardener when it comes to software. Like I can't pre-plan a big project like out. I
Interesting.
need to like feel it out. I need to see the UI. I need to like rip it all out, do it again. This is not the efficient way to do things for sure, but it's just like how I
Interesting.
like to operate. So I'm not quite there yet. We're getting there. As when it gets a little bit farther along, I'll be ready to like be like, okay, like I got the lay of the land, and now I could probably like structure more of it and outline more of it and put things, whether it's in GitHub issues or Trello or some other tool, like I could write up like what each thing is supposed to do. But at the earlier stages, I can't really do that.
Where
Like
where
I have
where does
notes
this
and things, but
outline gardener thing come from? I like
well, this
this.
this is like a really known thing. Actually, if you look it up, it's like for like novel writers. There's like the outliners. Like so, one of my favorite writers, Brandon
Um,
Sanderson. He's a fantasy writer, and he is a huge outliner. So he's like everything's outlined, and then
hmm.
he's just like so all the major plot beats and everything that happens, and it's all structured. And then he's just he's obviously like writing the actual sort of interactions and you know just
Dialogue.
the actual words, dialogue, and whatnot. Yes, there you go. But he knows everything that's going to happen. Basically, I'm sure there's whatever as he gets in there. I think he does change stuff, but he's got it very planned out. And you have like the gardener, like George R. R. Martin. If you're familiar with Game of Thrones, like he's also a fantasy writer, and he writes the gardener style, where he's like just kind of going out there. And I think he does, of course, have some rough outline of where things are going, but he's also like goes with it when he gets taken another direction and things like that.
Interesting.
So yeah,
Cool. I like that.
it's a kind of a useful thing to think about yourself in different ways. Like, and to me,
Mm-hmm.
software is very much like being a novelist or any type of artistic pursuit. I find it very artistically oriented.
I agree.
So yeah. All right, he had one other question here. Touching on the subject of once, so I guess this is more for me. How do you handle on-prem installations of your customers at HelpSpot? How is it implemented at technical architectural level? And what percentage of customers are on-prem? And tricks and experiences with that. So so HelpSpot is the on-prem version of HelpSpot is kind of a standard PHP app. You just download it, install it. There's a little installer that runs. It's not quite as fancy as the Once app, where there's like a one command to install it. That is something kind of interesting. Time-wise, I don't really have the time to kind of get into that right now, but we have thought about some things along those lines. HelpSpot
What do you
is
mean
also
download it? Do you download a zip of like the whole project?
Yeah, like, well, you actually download like a zip of the files, and then you put them in a spot, and then there's instructions, and it's kind of a little
Gotcha.
more
Okay.
older school than
Yeah.
not all automated, but also because Once, as we talked about, is like taking a ultra narrow focus,
Right.
where HelpSpot isn't that. So like HelpSpot can run on Windows, or it can run on Linux, or it can run on MySQL, or it can run on Microsoft SQL Server. So there's like just more setup and involved in that than and some of it could be automated, but also sometimes people need to install the components, which some of that can't, especially on Windows, like can't be as automated. Or if they have to do stuff in IIS and whatever. So we actually did for a long time have a Windows installer that would automate a lot of that stuff for people. But in the end, like actually just in the last year or so, we got rid of that because it's actually more hassle than it's worth. And then
God,
people
that is
can't.
So far outside of anything I've ever done to build a Windows installer for a PHP app.
It's sort of grim.
That's wild.
But for a while it was fine because like the Windows people didn't know anything about PHP. And so it was like, we'll handle the PHP stuff for you, so you don't really have to think about that. But now, like Windows, Microsoft has embraced PHP more, and so there's more experience out there in general with it. And so it's like, and it's just gotten easier to install in general. So it's like, let's just like do the old school. It's like a list of stuff you have to do. If you don't have these things set up, like you have to set them up, but then you do, and you manage it because you're an IT server administrator, and that's what you do. Which is also one of the problems we had, like when it was just in our installer and we're like configuring your IIS and installing PHP, if there's like a security release of PHP, like now we have to like make sure we're like instantly have a new installer and things like that. Or people just want to make a change to the configuration, but now it's not clear how they would do that because like we've set it up. So this way they can just set it up and they can control it on their end and they can do whatever they want. Or if they want to not upgrade PHP, and they want to run an older version for a while, then they can, like whatever, they're fully in control. So that's where that kind of works for us. But HelpSpot is, very enterprisey, and it's at this point the on-premise version is only going to be for people, as we've talked about many times, who have real IT administrators and want to do that for some actual reason. So again, like asking them to do a couple steps there is not unreasonable. It's never a reason like why somebody does or doesn't buy HelpSpot. Yeah, and percentage of on-prem for us is like, I don't know, percentage of new sales is maybe like 20% or less than 20%, probably less at this point. Overall is higher just because we have customers who've been on-prem for a long time, but it's still probably now at more like 30%, something like that. So thanks, Thomas, for the feedback. We do read all your emails, see that? So email us.
The two of us do.
Yes,
definitely.
We do. When Justin told us our tool to organize this.
So other feedback I forgot about. Ben Ornstein, friend of the pod, replied on Twitter and said, "This is the worst idea I've ever heard about our amazing idea that we gave away to the people."
What's up with that? We're giving away free good ideas here.
Benevolent dictators giving away bread and circuses, and he's like, "This is a terrible idea."
He didn't like our idea.
He hated it.
He did hate it.
So he had some good points. And he's a smart guy, so I'm inclined to believe him. But yeah, there was some feedback about the idea, which is like project management built into Transistor, basically. What was his main beef? Do you remember?
I think it was just like that. He didn't think it was something people would pay for. It's kind of like the main beef. And I don't actually disagree. I mean, to me, it's more like the type of thing. It's like the Steve Jobs-ism of like, is it a feature or is it a product? Like, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, I was coming from the like, I want this in transistor aspect, even if I might not have actually said that, but yeah, is it a freestanding app? Again, like everybody's bars are different too. Like, you know, in America, what we're thinking of is like, can I make this into like $1 million a year business, right? Like that's kind of like a bar you're trying to get to, or maybe it's like $500,000 or whatever, like enough where I could hire someone maybe, and like things like that. Like, can I get to a certain self-sustaining level? But there's other countries where that you don't need that much money, and so there are some variables in there, but I like it more as a feature of some other type of product, like, where you podcast host, and you're kind of locked in there, which is always a great business feature. And then, but hey, there's other things we need to run this podcast besides just hosting, and maybe they could do some of those things. But I don't know if it's actually, whatever. Obviously, they're the experts. I've given this 10 seconds of thought, but I do think it would be handy to have some more features.
You get what you pay for here on the pod. So the ideas are worth what you pay for.
I don't know if you should just run out and build things we say you should build. Like, we might tell you to build something, but you shouldn't necessarily do it. It's like how we play doctors on here too. Like, we might tell you some doctoring things, but you shouldn't necessarily go out and inject yourself with something.
Honestly,
say we're injecting.
You probably shouldn't listen to us at all. Don't do anything we say. Honestly,
just turn this off right now. Like, that's going to be your best bet.
If you start telling your friends what's the good word, like, I'm not responsible for that. If they make fun of you, that is not my fault, honestly.
Outcast freak after this, listen to the show. Exactly. Like, that's on you.
The other person that chimed in was Arvid Call, and he was like, "Oh, this makes sense to add into Podline." And I was like, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense," because he's doing the call-in thing. But like, I don't want to do a call-in. Like, I don't want to do a call-in thing for this show, because then you got to figure out how to splice in the audio, and like, give me like you said, an inbox to manage it. And it makes a lot of sense for him to be like, you can call in or you can email in, and while we're here, let's do some other features. But who knows what he's up to.
Yeah, I think there's been a few of those podcast call-in things. I don't know. It's kind of weird though. I guess for randos, the call-in is kind of interesting. Versus like in Riverside, like we could send a link to somebody and have them join us, as we've done. But I guess like a true call-in show is a little bit different.
Yeah, Startups for the Rest of Us has call-in questions.
Yeah. Call-in questions. Like, it's like they listen to it. It's recorded. I take it.
It's like a voicemail.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. See, that business seems that's like a very narrow scope thing.
Yeah, I agree.
But I like his other thing, which is like the podcast.
Super cool.
Yeah, AI. Looking for your brand mentions,
the other one.
And PodScan. Like that seems to me like that's got some potential there.
Yeah, so for the edification of the listener, Arvid is working on, he started with Podline, which is this like call-in show, and then he's like kind of half pivoted to PodScan, maybe podscan.fm, who knows. Dave, you can find that for the show notes. Good luck. And this one like ingests every single podcast that is published and transcribes it, and allows you to scan for like brand mentions or competitor mentions or your name or something like that, like minutes after the podcast is released, and it'll like send you an email. So there are tools like this, for Reddit and for Hacker News and stuff, but this is the first I've heard of it for podcasting, which is really interesting and sounds like a ton of data, but he's making it work.
Don't you think this is, to me, this is one of my very first businesses that I started and half built and never finished. But I love these idea of businesses that are like data driven. Like there's some pile of data. There's a pile of government data. There's a website. There's a bunch of podcasts, right?
Yes.
It's like somebody's done all the hard work, and I can just put this thin veneer over top of it and make it into something useful and awesome. Like
government data is a freaking gold mine. So I don't want to. I don't want to make it reductive, but Geocodio, which is a friend of the Laravel community, Michelle and Matthias Hansen, Geocodio, this is very reductive, is just a layer over public data. Like, it's a geocoding service, and they do a ton of work, of course, but it's just a layer over public data.
There's a lot of cleaning and like organize that in multiple countries and all that stuff. It's like, but that's all the terrible part, right? Like they're doing the terrible part. Like you can go to the USPS website and run address
Caste
lookup, but
certification,
then
yes.
right, but now there's all this other terrible parts of it that they handle. Yeah,
And they combine like congressional districts and stuff like that.
yeah,
So back at the property tax company, we would buy data from one of these providers,
yeah,
um, because in Texas there are 254 counties, and we would buy normalized data. Each county is responsible for releasing their own property and property tax data, and it's
yeah,
all different, of course. Of course, it's
right.
all different. It all
Yeah,
sucks. And so there was a company. There were actually 2 or 3 companies that would sit on top of all of that and take the public dumps that you can just download from DCAD, which is Dallas County Central Appraisal District, and they would normalize them and resell them to us for like
yep,
$500 to $1,000 a county.
yep.
And one of them,
Oh, a county. Wow,
a
that's
county, we would pay them.
wow.
We
That's a
would
chunk
buy
of
for
change.
10 major
Yeah.
counties, and we would pay them $10,000 twice a year.
Mm,
Um,
wow.
and one of these companies just, in the past few years got bought by Ryan LLC, which is a big state and local accounting firm. So they just like
Mm,
they sold out and they made it. But yeah, there's freaking, and it's just so like, it's so tempting to be like, I'm gonna download this 6 gigabyte CSV and turn it into
right.
something usable.
Yeah.
There's a
It's
guy.
and there's
There's
such a
actually a guy.
mm,
Oh shoot, what is his name? I forget. There's a guy in Tiny Seed that does this for like foreclosures, and he like sells
ah,
the foreclosure data to somebody, and I forget who. But yeah, this is such a great like archetype.
so it's, yeah, just always tingles me. I'm like, oh, that's a business where it's just like there's all this data out there, and I'm just gonna do something with it. And it is hard because like if the data is too good already, like that's like not a very
Correct.
defensible business. And then
Yep.
so you need something hard enough, but at the same time, if it's too hard, now you're just collecting data, and that's a whole terrible
Right.
thing. You want to use the raw data, but like Geocodio is like a perfect example. It's like there's a lot of raw data, but it's all kind of crappy, so they
Yep.
uncrapify it, and that's a lot of work, and so now that's valuable.
Yep.
So yeah, that's all. I
And
love all that
often
stuff.
you end up selling to normies.
Yeah,
Most of the time, you sell to like normal businesses. Like, who wants to buy property tax data? Mostly,
right.
real estate agents and banks and insurance people and stuff like that.
Well, we have a thing. I mean, we do this ourselves. It's interesting. So all our like back office systems that run the store for HelpSpot are like predate Stripe and all this stuff, and they've been updated. And actually, Eric, who still works at part of Laravel News, Eric still manages our back office store that just got rebuilt last year again for like the 3rd or 4th iteration. But so we have to collect sales tax in like 3 or 4 states, or whatever it is, and we just download a county sales tax. We buy a aggregation of all the sales tax rates in every county and some cities in the country, and we just feed that into this back office system, and that's how we do sales tax. And so every year I have to like, I'm probably supposed to do it more than every year, but every year or so I just buy this again and update it with the latest sales tax info. Yeah, and it is like interesting because it's like, well, I pay these people like $300 or $400 or whatever. It's like, yeah, Stripe does that now, but Stripe wants like a 0.5%. So
Yeah,
now it's like way more than $400.
for
So am
sure.
I gonna pay Stripe like for the convenience? Is the convenience worth thousands of dollars a year? I don't know. So like, still in the old school setup for now.
I did one of these. I tried one of these businesses also. It was licensing data. So for like electricians and plumbers and dentists and CPAs, all of that data, at least in Texas, is publicly available, and it tells you when the license needs to be renewed. For some of them, it tells you if the continuing education has been completed or not. And so I ingested it all and made it all searchable and cleaned it all up. And then I started I did the whole thing. I cold emailed a bunch of plumbing companies and was like, hey, I've got all of, I can monitor your licenses for you so you don't get in legal trouble. And I think I got like 2 customers at $50 a month. And it was like a freaking slog. And then I just was like, this is not worth it. But
It's hard to sell those
it's
kind
so
of
tempting.
businesses. Yeah, it is so tempting. I do love those businesses.
It was fun. It would just like every night it would check the Texas website,
Data.
download it, parse it,
Love
send
data.
an email, and I was like, that's it. That's the whole business. I don't even need a website.
So great.
Yeah.
Just runs itself. Now, see,
Yeah.
if you could have automated the like outreach part and really
I
got
know.
that, then it doesn't matter. Like even if you're just adding a couple a month, who cares? Like
know.
over time, it just builds up. But Yeah, it's hard to reach those kind of businesses. Like
It
they're not
is. It
the
really
easiest to
is.
deal with
And
for
some
like
of
the
them were just like,
subscriptions.
yeah, we don't really care. Like the license is
Yeah,
expired and we don't really care. I'm like,
right. Yeah, that's
shoot,
true too.
that's not
Like
great.
every couple of years, we just like figure out who's expired and go
Exactly.
deal with it.
It's like, oh, dang it, this isn't gonna work.
Yep. Oh man. All right. What do we want to do here?
All right, what's next?
Some real topics. I guess let's just do this one quick one. Laracon US tickets on sale now. So
On
go
sale
get
now.
your Laracon US tickets. Hopefully I will be there. My oldest might be going to college, in which case I won't be there. But
That
my
would be a
plan is to be
travesty.
there. That would be a travesty. I bought the
Doesn't he want to
ticket,
do a
so
gap year or something? Make him do a gap
I
year.
know. We'll be like, go take yourself to college. Whatever.
Yeah, just
here's
go,
$200 bucks. Buy a ticket.
walk around Europe or something. Whatever
Right.
people do in gap years. What do I know?
We should do a gap year. Yeah.
So what's
thought about
the
that a little bit,
likelihood? Not of a gap
I
year,
think-
of you being there.
I think it's high, but
Okay.
you know, it's August 27th and 28th. A few of the schools he's applied to last year did have their first days, their drop-off days on those dates. So we'll see. But obviously it changes every year because it's like when the weekend falls, whatever.
Right.
Sometimes they just randomly change it. So, and there's a huge variance. Like some of the schools were like August 15th, and some of the schools are like September, 4th or whatever. So it's not like standardized or anything. So, but my plan is to be there. The Userscape crew will be there for sure. And I'll be there 90% to be there. Even if I can just fly in, fine. Like if it's as long as it's on the first day, I could always fly in and make the second day.
Yeah.
We will see.
Oof. Well, I hope you make it.
I hope so too. All right. Caleb Porzio just released some Blade videos as part of the Livewire kind of training video series, which I love. Definitely you should all go buy that. It's super good. If you're going to do Livewire, just like mandatory purchase because it's just going to save you so much time. But yeah, he just released a Blade one. It's not really Livewire at all. It's just about Blade. But I think it's super useful because again, I think there is, if you're using Livewire deeply, like Blade and Livewire, there's a lot you have to kind of understand there. Yeah, of how they overlap and where you should use one and the other. And the vast majority of the time, like we think you need a Livewire component, like you can very often just use a Blade component. And that's what you should do because it just makes the mental model of everything much simpler if you're not thinking about like these 20 nested Livewire components and the data they're passing around and all that stuff, even though that stuff has gotten much better in Livewire 3. So it is much better if you have to do that, but you should generally avoid doing that if you can. So I think that's obviously why he's doing this, is like to really highlight how you use components well and to avoid needing to use them, use Livewire components instead of just a regular old vanilla Blade component. But yeah, there's always some cool things in there. And I've only watched half of it. I watched like half of it. Yeah.
What?
This morning I watched like half of it.
I thought he released it today.
Yeah. I'm right on it.
Oh man, we got a super fan
I'm
over here.
Big business thing and just sitting around smoking cigars. No,
smoking cigars, wearing a top hat. That's amazing.
Oh, I'd love a top hat, man. Top hat is high on my list of things I would really enjoy.
You should get a top hat. What's stopping you?
Me and my son, my oldest son, over the weekend, we watched a documentary from PBS on the building of the Eiffel Tower. And at one point, there was this old photo in there, and everybody had a top hat. And they're all like basically the same top hat, except, I mean, it's like 100 people. They all have top hats, men, obviously. And one guy's a bowler hat, and one guy has a top hat that's like tan or white. But everybody else just has a black top hat, and it's awesome.
All right, so here's the deal. You fly out to Laracon. We do a live recording of the Mostly Technical podcast on stage, and we'll both wear top hats and smoke cigars.
Yes. Wow, I wonder if we get away with it. It's Texas. We could probably get away with smoking cigars.
It's Texas. We can do whatever we want. We can shoot each other in the face on stage, and it would be fine.
Oh, it's Texas, baby.
That's right. That's
Very
right.
Excited. All right, that's a deal. I like that plan. Top hats for the pod.
So the videos are good. I think that's what happened.
The videos are good. Go buy the videos.
The videos are good.
Nothing much else to say really there, but videos are good. I love it. And then the next series he's doing is the one on SPAs, which I'm super excited for because everything I'm building is a Livewire SPA, and I'm sure there are a few little quirks I already found and you got to deal with, which is not too bad. But I'm sure he'll have some big insights there from the inside. So I'm very looking
He's
forward to that
cranking
one.
them out, man.
He is, yeah, he's working hard. Stuff's happening over there in Livewire land. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. And he sent an email about it too, which is nice. Like he's in the zone. He's like making the content, letting people know about
Marketing
it.
guy.
Marketing stuff's
Good.
happening. Yeah, I'd
Good
love to have
job,
a big
Caleb.
email newsletter. I don't. I've tried like 5 times to build up an email list, but it just doesn't stick for me. I don't know. You have an email
Yeah.
list?
No, I mean, yes, but I don't think I've
But
ever
not
sent an
really.
email. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I feel that way too. I feel like, with the platform wars and the algorithms, email is still the last safe haven, and
Yeah.
I just feel like I really need to do that as I embrace my, my creator era.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't quite cracked that nut yet. But
I
I think
know.
I think I'm gonna put some energy towards that because it does seem like the right thing to do.
Yeah, I feel like you especially have some stuff I feel like you could hang it off of. Although you have a
Mm-hmm.
number of things, which is also then that is always one of my problems. Like it's kind of tricky because like if you have
Yep.
a number of things, that's sort of weird too. It's not just like the ultra focused. I'm only talking about this, and
Right.
we're all in
Yes.
on this one topic, and everybody's on board, and the train's going this
Right.
way. It's like,
You
yeah,
kind
well,
of have
I
to
do
like
this stuff, I
me.
do the other
Like,
thing, and
yeah.
yeah, it's the me newsletter, which then that's kind of like what the podcast is. So I don't know. It's
Right.
like I would like to have some. But I don't know. It's like about HelpSpot. It's like B2B apps, not like a great thing to build that around.
Nah,
Although,
that doesn't move me. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like you're not signed up for that, so whatever. I don't know. It's another thing I will never properly accomplish. That's all right.
Yeah, it's okay. You've got a lot. You've got a lot you've accomplished.
Yeah, more to do.
All right, let's go from there to Inertia versus Livewire. So Taylor recently tweeted again, just as a reminder was his text, and then it was a quote tweet of himself, which is just a total power move. A quote tweet of himself that was like, reminder, it's not Inertia versus Livewire, and like they're not enemies, they're friends.
Right.
So to set the stage, Livewire is, live view, Rails Turbo, HTMX. That's that kind of technology. Inertia is for more JavaScript centric. You can have an SPA without having to go full SPA, and you still have backend routes that sends data to the front end SPA. So you would pair it with something like Vue or React. So that's the context. My first question for you is: did something happen recently where Taylor felt like he needed to remind everyone?
I was wondering
Did
that
I
when I
miss
saw that
something?
tweet. I mean, I don't. I would guess yes, right? Because he's
Right,
tweeting it,
gotta
so
be.
presumably yes. But I have to say I didn't like really see anything in particular where I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like people are throwing down in the streets over
Nice.
Inertia or Livewire or any of that. So I haven't seen anything, but I'm not always 100% on top of that stuff. So yeah, but it is a good reminder, regardless, that they kind of work together. Yeah, I mean the Inertia is fine. Like I don't like it nearly as much as Livewire, but if you're all in, I think it is full SPA. It's still full SPA. If you're using Inertia, you are all in on SPA. It's just that like it's simpler, so you have the connector and it knows some stuff about Laravel. But even though it's Laravel agnostic, I think
it is.
But yeah, but
it's
there
a
are
protocol
some connectors.
Mostly, yeah,
for the different frameworks. So so yeah, if you're in JavaScript land and then you want to go that route, which I mean has its benefits as we've talked about before. I mean the component story, especially of that end of the world, is far superior to Livewire still. So, but there are some stuff out there. I was just playing the other day with the Mary UI, which is kind of an interesting little Livewire component library and has some cool stuff. It's like still definitely like in heavy development, and it is one of these challenges all these component libraries have, which is like how much do you like design it or not design it, and if it is designed, like how do you customize that and all those things. Are they individual components you can just suck in 2 of them, or is it you got to take the whole thing because there's interconnectedness and stuff like that. So there was a couple little quirks to it, but it is kind of interesting if you're in that world. And then I don't know, I think it's like a super top secret that like Caleb's working on some component stuff also. So I think all that story over the next year is going to get a lot better in Livewire as well. But
I think so.
I would like to see people doing more commercial components too. Hopefully, as it builds out, because like even if you have like an official library of components from Caleb and you have some open source ones and whatever, like there's still just gonna be weird stuff that is more complicated than normal people want to build.
Yeah, for sure.
So having some more of those, like as it expands into heavier use cases and where people are willing to pay money for solutions, like to see more of that. I think like Velo has one.
I think he does, yeah.
Yeah, where that does a couple things along those lines. Like it does like a Command K type menu and
Yep.
things like
Search
that.
bar.
Where maybe he was like almost a little ahead of the curve. So I think hopefully he stays with that, because I think if like the curve's going to catch up to him on that, and then could be good.
Yeah, I want Philo to get rich. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my take. I used to be big Inertia. And now I'm big Livewire.
We got him.
You got me.
In.
You got me.
Woo!
It's just it's easier in my opinion.
Yep.
It's I don't know, it's less complicated, and I know that the so Inertia's been like somewhat adopted by Laravel, LLC, the company.
Right.
I don't know if there's inertia.laravel.com, like there's livewire.laravel.com.
I think it's still its own
inertiajs.com
JS site, yeah. Yeah, it's still Inertia
so
JS.
here's my take on Inertia. I think Inertia is awesome. If you want to stay in JavaScript land, like if you need a linear style app where everything is like a JavaScript component, you're going to use Inertia for that. I wish Inertia was a little bit more Laravel specific.
Yeah.
Because the party line is Inertia is complete. Like Inertia is complete. Right. We're not working on it. We don't need to work on it because Inertia is complete. But then you go and you look at the issues, and it's like, I've opened a few issues about like Inertia with Vue.js, and it's like, I mean, it is complete, but there are still things like I don't think modals exist in Inertia.
Yeah, that you can't do modals or not. It's tricky anyway.
Yeah, like modal routes don't exist. And that was promised, years ago. And there's another one about like named slots. When I was building something, I was trying to use named slots with Inertia, and it's like, we don't support that. And so I feel a little bit like, oh man, this is, while respecting that the protocol is feature complete, I feel a little bit like, this is it's over. Like, I want to see somebody pushing on the Vue side or the Laravel side or something. I can't speak to like the Rails or the React side, what they've got going on there. But I just felt like the Laravel Vue story was a little bit stagnating.
I do feel like
anytime terrible? Should I edit that out? Is that mean?
I started using it. The next generation HelpSpot was an Inertia app, and then like it's just not like there's just too many of those like problems, and then it's hard to like build such a foundational element on something that is never going to be worked on again.
Yeah.
So like it's hard. Like I feel like there are open issues in the repo, right? And like so presumably even if half of them are bogus, like half of them are probably not bogus, and I'm going to hit those things someday, and I'm going to know that there is no fix ever coming.
Right.
And yes, I can fork it and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But like,
I'm not doing that.
Like, it's such a like deeply core thing too. It's
time
like
for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then the whole rest of the ecosystem, like, it's like, I think it's an unfortunate place for it to have that set up, because it's like Vue, there's stuff going on, and React, there's tons of stuff going on, and Laravel, there's tons of stuff going on. So like on the front and the back, it's like, oh man, it's like full steam ahead. But then the thing that talks between them is never going to get updated ever again. And it's like, man, like, I don't know, like, is that even, how realistic is that? Like, it doesn't seem realistic to me that that's possible. So I mean, again, like maybe it won't be possible, and then they'll be like, yeah, we're going to fix it and make it better and put some resources into it. And I know Laravel is like expanding here lately, and so maybe they'll have more people to even do that. But still, it does feel like a bit of a weird spot to depend on something that is, at least the stated position is, they're not going to work on anymore. So to me, definitely like a pretty big downside. And then I do find Livewire much simpler overall. There are definitely some gotchas, but I mean that's true with all this stuff, so it's hard to be like, that's not like a huge ding on it. And I also think it's going to be an area, I think we talked about this before, but where it's going to get better over the coming year, where like there'll be more dev tools around it and more,
Yes.
Caleb wants to do some stuff where maybe it's a little easier to see exactly what's going on without having to try to like manually like look at the messages going back and forth and figure out what's up in that way to visualize it a bit more. So I think especially once we have that stuff,
Livewire
it'll be
3
great.
is just cooking, man.
Yeah,
like that was the big turning point for me, was Livewire 3.
3 is huge. Yeah,
3 is huge.
Yeah, so much stuff changed, and like all the stuff when you do have to do weird stuff, like how the Livewire components talk to each other and be nested and stuff, like all that stuff got a lot better. All the networking of it got a lot better, for like these real world uses where you actually do have a lot of data, and it is a big app, and it's not just like, I think it started out a little more like, hey, you have this one widget on your screen that's like needs to do something reactive, and so just use Livewire and you drop it in there and it's just that one thing and it's simple. But when you have like the whole app is those things, like obviously it's much more complicated. So I think that's really, they put a ton of work into improving that, and Caleb, of course, especially. And I think it's like really paid off. And the SPA mode, I mean, if you haven't tried SPA mode or you haven't tried Livewire since they added that, it's actually a humongous change that really kind of revolutionized it. I mean, it is just as fast as React now. It's like instantaneous.
Crazy.
And
wild.
And then our boy DHH, he's stealing stuff from Livewire.
That's
what they just added to Turbo. They're like, oh, let's do this mode where when you hover and it goes and gets it. I don't even use the hover mode currently in the Livewire setup, but yeah. So Livewire, great.
I'm not a hater. Sorry, Taylor. It's not a versus. I'm not a hater.
No, I don't hate Inertia, but I think it's just, what you like. I mean, obviously, I think both of us are not like super JavaScript oriented people to begin with. So that's also like, Inertia is obviously forcing you down the like, yes, the entire front of your application is going to be JavaScript. Like that's what it is. So, so I think that's also it's our default state to prefer Livewire, I think, especially now that we got you in there a little bit.
Yeah, got me. It's crazy.
I can't wait now. We get these babies settled down. We get all the other stuff settled down. We get you some time to do some real hacking when you can get back on the computer. Then we're gonna have some hot Livewire takes, some feisty.
Over for you all. It's over.
When he gets back in the ring, forget about it. You're all in trouble.
That's right.
Oh man. All right. What else? We want to do this DTOs? I don't know. Is this too heavy for you?
Yeah, I don't have much on DTOs. Do you have a lot on DTOs?
I mean, I've been in them a lot lately, so I have a little bit on.
All right, tell me.
We could save.
Tell me your DTOs. No, tell me. What are we at right now?
Well, it's sort of interesting because it's coming around a little bit too. Because the other thing Caleb talked about today, I think he put a video out on it, or maybe just talked about newsletter. I didn't get that far with it, but he's talking about basically he added DTOs to Livewire but he calls them the form objects.
Give us a 101 on DTOs for the uninitiated.
So it's a data transfer object, and so it's basically just a way to have this object that's like a plain PHP object in theory, although there's the Spatsy one is a little different than that, but where so you just have a way to like transfer data around your app in a safer and cleaner way. So like whether it's coming in from a form that turns into one of these DTOs, and then your internal code expects the DTO and then can operate off that data. And the DTO maybe transforms the data if it needs to, it validates the data, things like that. So you kind of have this layer between the users and your internal code, and then it also works the other direction, where you have stuff internally, like maybe an API, right? And you want to send something out of the app, like you're going to transform your Eloquent model into a DTO, and then you're going to have a nicer, easily JSONable object that you can send back out.
So instead of passing around arrays with all these magic keys that you just kind of have to, like, as the developer, just like know that these keys are going to exist or not, you pass the magic array into a DTO. The DTO validates a bunch of stuff and turns them into like class properties that then your IDE can actually use and get autocomplete and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you get that kind of stuff too. Yep. The things I really like about it It is a different way of thinking, and it has tripped me up a little bit from just like, oh, because obviously Laravel will do a bunch of stuff for you. Like you can just return the model and like it'll do something reasonable with it and stuff like that. But I do really like uh that you always know exactly what's in the DTO. So like I'm never going to send something out of the app that I don't want to be exposed, because like there
Yeah.
just simply is no password in the DTO. Like I don't have to worry about if I like remembered the guarded or fillable or whatever way you want to handle that stuff. Like doesn't matter, because I'm
Yep.
never sending anything out of the app from the model directly. It's always going to be turned to a DTO first. And then that's clean. And then the reverse too, like I'm never being sent something in where somebody's going to send in something tricky or pass something I don't expect that gets past my security, because it's always going to be a DTO first. So I know what I'm getting in, and that will only ever contain those things. And then
so you
also
push all the unknowns to the boundary, and then once it's in your app, you're safe.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And then the other part that's super annoying to me in app development is just like validation rules, because it's like you have all these different places. Like you could use form requests, but then sometimes you have to validate things other places, and like the form request doesn't really, I don't know, maybe it's some way to hackily make it work there, but it's not like designed to work there, right? And so it's like, well, maybe I'll put the validation rules like in the models, and then I guess that's okay, but that's kind of weird in its own way. And like, so this also gives like the nice place for the validation rules. It's like the DTO has all the validation rules, and so it's validating everything. And then if I'm using this in all different places, so everywhere I would need validation, like the DTO is handling it. So I find that super nice, because like just a one spot to look for validation rules always, instead of having it in multiple spots or coming up with weird convoluted things like that. So yeah, so what I've been using is Laravel Data, which is the Spatsy. I always say the name wrong, but I think it's Spatsy package.
Spatsy.
And which is really awesome package. It is sort of insane because it just is
a lot of magic.
It does a lot of tons of magic. There's tons of like, it does way more than what I just described. Like it can make TypeScript definitions for your JavaScript front end.
If you're into that,
which is cool. If you're into that, it's cool.
You're a sick freak.
Which is like, again, like once you have defined the data coming in and out of your app, like you can do other magical sort of things, because it's like, well, now I have this information very structured, and I can create TypeScript definitions, or I can transform it in different ways and things like that. So it does a lot. Because it does so much, like the docs are a little bit tricky. It's some heavy reading when you read. It's definitely one you want to read front to back. You want the Aaron model. You don't just read the 2 pages you think you need, because like you need more than the 2 pages. So it's a little bit of heavy lifting there, but like once you're in there, it is very nice, and it does do a lot of things for you that you will ultimately want to do. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know. I just wanted to mostly bring it up. There are some tricky bits when you're using it for like forms and with Livewire, which it does handle with Livewire, but it's like you get past IDs for things, but then you have to kind of transform those into the actual items and whatever. It's gonna be too hard to talk about probably on a podcast, but it takes a little bit of work on your mental model and some trickery. Trickery is not the right word, but just there's some steps you have to take to make it work, I think, for you. A little bit of time in there, but so far I'm really digging it. So I wanted to give a shout out to the DTOs, and like feels like such a real programming thing. See, I don't get a lot of chance to be doing real programming with patterns.
You're mega brain,
things like that. Yeah, I don't know patterns. Like I couldn't name you another pattern probably, but there we go. I got a pattern. And I kind of
got a pattern. So got your programmer card. Yeah, you're big proper programmer these days, and I'm here for it. I dig it.
Yeah.
It's like this DTO thing is interesting. It's like a whole nother entity. You've got models, you've got controllers, you've got migrations, and now you've got DTOs.
Yeah,
it's like, that's interesting. It's not something I have done a lot of.
It is this weird world now too, where like I don't really have controllers in a sense, because I'm using Livewire full page components, and so it all just gets passed into Livewire. So it's like it is obviously like sort of a controller, but it's not like I have a controller where I'm then calling stuff directly in the controller. I'm doing stuff in the Livewire component. So there is like this bit of a weird world there. And And yeah, this is also partially because, like, again, like I do know this domain really well. It's like I know the security stuff around it pretty well, so it's like pretty straightforward in theory to kind of model it. Although it does get interesting when you have like these deep, bigger data objects where it's like a more central part of your app, and like there's these other data objects that make up your bigger data object, and how that all works together.
It's just turtles all the way down. That
Yeah,
does
it's a
sound
little bit turtles all the way down, but then it's like kind of awesome because it's like, well, here's the thing where I know every piece in this has been validated. I know every piece in this is in the format that and a safe format to send back to the user. So it is super awesome that way, to just have that there, just to use in that way. And then when you're using it with these front end frameworks, whether even with Livewire, it's like I don't want to pass stuff back in the Livewire calls that would expose things I don't want exposed. And so it's like, I just like pass the DTO around. It's got all the data. I know it's all safe and nice and wrapped up. So pretty cool.
I think everybody runs into this at some point when you have like a model or an action or a request or something where the user can initiate it from a form. The user can initiate it from an API request. You can run it from a job or a CLI command, or the user can bulk import it. And you're like, all right, this thing can enter my application 4 separate places. Where am I going to put the validation for all of this? And you end up making up, I think I've done a poor man's DTO and made up stuff like that, because it's like, I gotta centralize it. I can't have the importer using its own set of validation rules versus the form.
You know you're gonna mess that up like at some point, you know. Like that's a guaranteed bug in the future. So you hate that when you do those things. That's like, oh, I know for sure this is going to be a bug in a year. Like, because I'm not going to remember this thing.
Ahead, baby.
I just got to do it though.
I am actively writing legacy code right now.
Exactly. Exactly. That is what's crazy with like how I'm approaching this like next generation HelpSpot stuff, because it's like I'm just super taking my time and it's just going to take forever, and I'm just okay with that. And it's like I'm going to figure out DTOs. I'm just going to spend the time to do it, and that's just going to be the way it is.
Awesome.
And it'll be fine, or it won't be, but it'll probably be fine. And I'm just going to do it that way. Yeah, it'll probably be fine. I mean, we still have customers buying the current HelpSpot, so it's not like a mega rush. And there's 8 million competitors already, so we're not going to beat anybody to anything. Like it's doing our vision. What
a life of leisure.
It doesn't feel quite like a life of leisure, but yeah, I'm trying to approach
like
it
a life
more
of
leisurely.
leisure.
I'm trying to make, because my instinct is to, like, of course, like anybody, be like, I want to get this out. I don't want to work on it forever. You get bored of working on it. You get annoyed at working on it, whatever. It's like, just chill. It's gonna be all right. I get this light on me.
I know, you got to control your environment, man.
I know. I didn't think the sun was gonna be. It's weird. All right. Anyway, what else you got?
I got one more.
Anything else?
I got non-technical.
Good.
I'm on 2 cups max of half calf coffee.
Oh, he's going.
And I gave up Diet Cokes weeks ago.
You got to give up the diet. Yeah, that's just good.
It's gone.
That's just horrible. That's terrible for you, just in every way. So that's good.
The tiny light of joy in my life has gone out since giving up Diet Cokes.
It does feel like that when you give these things up. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, it's just Diet Cokes, they're so cold and they're so bubbly. Jeez, they're just great.
Have you tried seltzer?
Yeah, I like seltzer.
You can do seltzer as a replacement. Squeeze some juice in it. Keep it cold.
Oh, that's the lamest thing I've ever heard. Squeeze some juice in it.
Diet Coke. Diet Coke is especially bad. Diet version. Come on, you can have a Coke.
Diet Coke is great. Diet Coke is the best soda possible.
I don't know about that.
Unless you have a functioning pancreas, in which case Dr. Pepper, ice cold Dr. Pepper. In fact, the pure cane sugar, so it's like the Mexican Coke, but the Dr. Pepper version
I haven't had Dr. Pepper in 20 years.
Oh,
I should get a Dr. Pepper.
It is the freaking best.
I was just reading go ahead.
So anyway, Diet Cokes are gone. Have been for a few weeks. I had been cutting off coffee around noon or 1, but I was still having a giant latte every day,
of coffee,
along with 2 or 3 cups of half calf. We brew half calf at home just because we like to drink coffee.
Yeah.
So now I've cut out the latte altogether. It's a decaf latte fully. If I get one, it's fully decaf, and I'm limited to 2 2 cups of half calf here at the house because the sleep is not great.
Sleep is so
The
key to
sleep is
everything,
not great.
man.
I'm
The sleep is
waking
the
up 2
foundation
or
of
3
everything.
times a night, just like wide awake.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta watch that stuff, man. The sleep, the other thing would be sleep apnea too, if you want to go down that path. But I would definitely start with the caffeine, cutting
Yeah, I
out
don't
as
want
much
to
of that
have sleep
caffeine as you
apnea,
can.
so I'm not going to look into it.
Right, not one more thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. The sleep is like the foundation of everything. As soon as the sleep goes, everything else is shit. Like that's just the way it is. Because like even the things you have, you're so much less resilient to them. Because like when you're tired, you just get overwhelmed so much easier and all that stuff. And then obviously just stuff is actually worse because you're tired and things don't function in your body properly when you're, when you have like that deep tired, and you don't even necessarily know it. It's like you think you're operating fine until like you really realize, no, I'm not actually operating fine.
Oh, I don't think I'm operating fine. I've come home from like wherever I've been or I've been at home already and like crashed from 1 o'clock to like 3:30 most days. I'm just like, I cannot keep my eyes open. If you're taking
terrible. 2-hour naps, you know that it's probably not optimal sleep being had.
It's not
I
great.
mean, you obviously have other factors, but still, like you saw the night nurse. Is the night nurse still there or no?
Ian, this is the last week.
Oh, so yeah, that's like
we don't have her tonight, but then we have her Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and that's it.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
It's a bummer.
I was gonna say it'd be good to optimize those nights if you're getting full nights, at least those nights, but you won't actually have her.
Well,
so
turns out we ran out of money, and so can't pay her, $1 million every night forever. To come over to the house. Yeah. She has another family coming up too. Actually, that's the real reason.
Well, how's it going so far with that? Have you noticed any changes or not yet?
No, not yet. I started, a few days ago.
It takes
so
a
I
little
haven't
bit.
really gotten there. I think honestly the goal is to go full decaf at some point.
I mean, I don't know if we talked about this, but the decaf has calf. Like I hate to tell you that, but
yeah, true. What's that? It's in the name.
It's all lies,
decaf.
Man. The decaf has calf.
No.
The decaf is full of calf. Like it's less calf than full caffeine, but there's still a fair amount of caffeine.
How much calf does a decaf have? If a decaf could have calf.
Yeah, it's got more than you would want. It also just depends like how they're doing it. There's like the different ways. The one that's like less toxic to remove the caffeine lets through more caffeine, if I recall. Obviously. The one that's like kind of more toxic does do a better job of removing caffeine.
What do you mean toxic? Are they using like mercury to remove it, or what's going on here?
It's like really actually horrible stuff to remove the caffeine from coffee. You probably don't want to look into that if you're thinking about drinking decaf coffee, but
right now
benzene, I think they use something like that.
Isn't that like an industrial cleaner?
Yeah, that's it. That's the stuff.
Hey, if it's good enough for manufacturing equipment, it's good enough for me.
It's good enough for my liver.
Okay, how much caffeine is in decaf coffee? Decaffeination. This is from Google snippet, so I have a 0% confidence in this.
Sure.
Decaffeination removes about 97% of the caffeine in coffee beans. A typical cup of decaf has about 2 milligrams of caffeine compared to regular, which has 95.
Yeah, so still some, but it also depends again, like where you get it. Are they testing? Yeah, this is like they test it once, and like who knows the process? I don't know. All that stuff very fuzzy.
It didn't work for sacred? Me. Decaf coffee.
It didn't work for
caffeine?
me until I gave it up. I gave up. I had to give it up all decaf, calf, the whole thing for it to for my sleep to get right. But that's not true of everybody. I mean, there's definitely people who drink lots of caffeine and they sleep fine or whatever. But yeah, I think it's also one of those things where combined with stress and stuff like that, it's extra bad, because like you get a little awake. You're not sleeping as deeply to begin with because the caffeine just takes that off a little bit. And then if you're super stressed, like when you do, get woken up, you like stay awake or you're thinking about stuff or whatever. So it kind of builds there too. But yeah, caffeine, man, it's bad stuff. I try to tell everybody. Nobody listens to me though. But
man, everywhere you turn. Everywhere you turn, they're trying to get you.
Anything. You can't have anything.
Can't have anything. When I was a kid, I used to drink like 6 sodas,
whatever you want,
run in a circle for an hour, and then fall asleep for like 12 hours.
It
was great.
Sleep right through.
Do whatever you want.
I know. It's terrible. This is all part of the horribleness of discovering that like you're the same person as a kid that you are as an adult, but like the adult body you're in now is like doesn't perform the way the kid body did. So now it's like there's like this
it's a disaster
asymmetry there. Yeah, it's a disaster. It's not good. Like when you were 10, you were invincible.
I was invincible. One time I fell off the roof and I was totally fine.
Oh my gosh.
I was invincible. I was out on the roof.
Just bounced up.
Yeah, I did. I walked in the back door and was like, "Hey guys, I fell off the roof." I was we had a 2-story house and I lived, my room was on the 2nd story and I saw icicles out the window. So I climbed out the window, obviously, with a hockey stick, obviously.
What you're gonna do.
And I was like scooting along under the eave where it wasn't iced, and I was hitting the icicles and watching them slide down the frozen roof and hearing them land on the porch below. It was totally awesome. I can't do that today. It was totally awesome. And I got 1 foot outside of the safe zone and slipped on the ice. So I'm sliding down the ice in my underwear, holding a hockey stick. And I'm like, I'm about to fall on the porch upon which the icicles are shattering. And I think, you know what? The porch isn't that big. I bet if I just push off at the end, I could clear the porch. And so I reach the end of the 1st-story roof and I push off and I go right over the porch into the grass, do a little tuck and roll, and literally walk in the back door where my parents are sitting on a Saturday morning. In my underwear, and I'm like, "Hey guys, I just fell off the roof. I'm gonna go put some clothes on."
This is the craziest story I've ever heard. That's unbelievable.
That's awesome.
You're indestructible. You're Superman.
I was. Now, if you look at me sideways, I'll die.
Just the speed of thought there. Your mind can't work that quick now.
Man.
Like how fast your mind worked there. You probably like had like 30 minutes of time. It was like all slow motion.
Yes,
you're like, okay,
I was in
no
bullet
problem
time for sure.
Yeah, bullet time. I'm just gonna give a nice solid push as I leave. I'm gonna fly through the air. It's gonna be no problem. Like now you'd already be on the concrete broken before you even thought that I'm sliding.
Yes.
Like, oh, I'm sliding. I'm dead.
I'm dead.
Like, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so, wow. Not what we used to be.
Man, you were brave. I used to just throw a baseball at the icicles and watch them fall, but I never got out there on the roof.
Kid thing in the world. Like there's some icicles. I'm gonna get a hockey stick and knock them off.
Just think, you have 4 kids who are going to think that way. That you have to be worried about climbing out on your roof.
Exactly. Yeah. 4 kids that are going to fall off the roof and walk in and be like, "Hey, Dad, I just fell off the roof." Like, oh my God, what?
Just like you did as a kid.
Yeah. So
that's a good closing
all I
there.
got. Yeah,
I think that's it. I don't think we can top that. We gotta leave it there.
So.
Oh man. All right. Thanks everybody. Mostlytechnical.com. Make sure you subscribe, go to the YouTube. You can see this light on my face for the whole episode. Very cool. Mostly Tech Pod. Give us feedback on Twitter there, as well as mostlytechnicalpodcast at gmail.com for feedback via email. And we, the royal we, will read them. Have a good week. Later.
See ya.